Hello there, and welcome to Community Live. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and how they came into the community world. And today we have a conversation with Deb Schell, a constant traveler, experienced photographer, writer, podcaster, founder of FindCalmHere community, and community strategist. So, hello, Deb.
Hi there, Yuri. Thanks so much for inviting me here today.
I'm always happy to talk to you. And the first question, what is your favorite animated film?
Oh, goodness, golly, Miss Molly. Animated film. Well, we were talking about, I was camping this past weekend and we were talking about Wally. I kind of like that. That's probably a good one. I like Wally. I'll say that
What
one.
moment from it do you remind right now?
Just like the loner. I'm gonna be I resonate with being alone and just doing this whole journey of like I'm well, and I clean up a lot. So I'm
Yeah,
basically alone at my house cleaning up half the day besides writing content and stuff. So
got
I'm a
it.
little bit of a clean freak.
How did anyone told you that, or it's your thoughts?
That I like to clean.
Yeah, that you have this. Yeah.
Among many businesses that I've tried to start over the last 20 years, one of them was a cleaning business. And I used to clean in hotel rooms and houses. But I realized after 10 years of doing that I really never wanted to enter anyone's house with cleaning supplies ever again, because that was like ridiculously too much work and stress. So, but I like cleaning only because it's instant gratification. It's like, if I wake up and I go downstairs and the first thing I do is kind of like tidy up the space, because then it's just mentally, I just feel a lot better when I have like a clean environment, and then I can like use my creative brain if there's like a lot of, I went through a whole minimalism process back in 2015 or 2016, 2017, where I like decluttered and did all this stuff with minimalism. And that kind of got me really into the like less is more kind of movement. So it's now become a part of my personality, I would say, over time.
Hmm. What more gives you an instant gratification?
What was what? I'm sorry.
What's more giving you an instant gratification?
What is more?
Yeah.
What other things give me instant gratification? Is that what you're saying? Well, food. I'm definitely,
Totally.
I definitely enjoy some good food and some good beer, some good wine. I'm pretty much a coffee, wine, and beer snob. So I like, really great coffee, really good craft beer, and amazing wine from local vineyards. Those are my key things.
If you would have to choose only one drink for the rest of your life, coffee, wine, or beer, what would you choose?
Coffee. Mm-hmm.
Always
I love
coffee.
some good. I love some good coffee. Like I used to grind the beans and do the whole like pour over thing. I don't do all that work anymore, but I usually get organic, like good organic, um, source coffee.
How many cups of coffee do you usually have during a day?
Well, it's a lot less now. When I was a journalist and a reporter, I used to drink a pot of coffee a day. I kind of picked that up from my editor somehow, but now I'm trying to stick to like 3 cups. There was a time when I quit coffee for a while, and I just did tea, and I got into tea a lot. So coffee and tea are kind of like, it depends on the mood there, but I would say coffee always wins the day.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Oh, my parents. This is an interesting question. So my parents are quite interesting. My parents met when they were missionaries in New York City, and they were standing at subway stations in the city and trying to mission to people who were in New York. And then they met and fell in love. And my dad sold his property in New Jersey where he had lived at the time. And his parents, he was about 14 years older than my mother. And so his parents had actually already passed. And so he was living in their house. He sold their house and then moved to Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and had me and my parents. My mom was an RN for many years. She's now retired. My father was a cartoonist by hobby and a biker, and he also did skateboarding tricks. So he was very adventurous and my creative side definitely comes from my father. And then my analytical and like just the important fact stuff comes from my mom's side. But my father passed away a few years back, and so I miss him very much. But my mother is in bliss with my sister and her 2 children, because my mother has been wanting grandchildren for a really long time. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to fill that gap for her. But luckily, my sister saved the day. And so my mom is in heaven with the kids, celebrating the joy of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Well, he's almost going to be 4. My nephew's 4 and my niece is going to be 1.
Do you ride bikes?
Do I ride bike? I don't right now. I got into spin bikes for a while, and I had a spin bike, and then I got kind of out of it. I have a bike. This is a good question. I have a bike. It's hanging up in my storage closet outside right now. And I bought it last year because I thought that was going to be a good idea. And then it just sat there, and it needs tires. It needs to get my tires in place. It needs a lot of work, basically. And I haven't made the effort. And I haven't figured out how to take the wheel apart because it doesn't fit in my little Honda Civic. So it's a whole thing. So I'm giving excuses of why I don't ride my bike, basically.
What was the story? Why did you decide to purchase it?
Oh, that's another thing. Well, my ex that I was living with last year wanted a bike and didn't have one. And so I bought one and was like, but this is my bike. And you can't ride it. Even though it wasn't like rideable, because it needs, and it's like, what I also realized was that it's too short, or I'm too short for the bike. I'm sorry. The bike is taller than me, basically. And I can't actually like get on the bike without like assistance from like a step stool or something. So probably not the best buying purchase that I've made for the last couple of years. But yeah, it was kind of more of a spiteful, silly thing.
Why do you still keep them eat?
The bike I'm keeping because I really do. I live in a nice little new neighborhood that I moved in last year, and it's much less traffic. And so it would be good for me to start practicing riding bike, because I think my biggest fear was about like falling off the bike, because I haven't ridden a bike outside for a really long time. So I've been on spin bikes, but there's like stable versus, so I think I'm keeping it because I really want to prioritize like eventually being able to practice riding it. And one of the things that I need to do is reach out to a friend who said she has a bike rack. So once I get a bike rack and I can take it to the store and have somebody look at it to like fix it up, and then see if I can get the seat lowered, that I can actually ride it, then I'll take it, because I go to state parks all the time. And there's a lot of really great rails to trails here in Pennsylvania. So those would be good places to practice. So those are my like one day kind of things, that's why I'm keeping it.
Yeah, I can feel it. I also have a bike somewhere, so I totally get it. Cool. So let's move to yourself. What is the first memory of your childhood that comes to your mind right now?
Playground with my sister and my dad playing tennis. My dad was teaching me tennis when I was a kid, and there was like a brick wall where they would play movies in the summertime. They would project like movies onto this thing. And my dad and I would actually use that during the day, and we would hit tennis balls against the wall to practice instead of like in the actual tennis court. And then we would ride our bikes to the playground, and that was a whole thing. And then they had like a mini golf course there, but you had to bring your own golf clubs. So we would like pack our car sometimes and bring the golf clubs and kites and like spend all day there. So I would say, yeah, that's.
Do you still play
cool
tennis?
No. Probably the last time was with my dad. I play table tennis. Now that's different, right?
Yeah, at least it has the word tennis in it. So
I do play table tennis. In fact, I was a member of, for a good time, a table tennis club in the central Pennsylvania area here, who at one point, the table tennis club had hosted the Pennsylvania State Table Tennis Tournament every year. And so people would come from all over the state to Middletown, this little town where I used to live. It's about 45 minutes from where I'm at now. And they would all come and they would have ratings. And so you would have to qualify and have a specific rating to be able to play, to qualify. And then you would like only be able to play with rated players in your category. But I ended up photographing this when I was a journalist in Middletown. I covered it for a couple of years. And then I made really good friends with them, a lot of the members. And so I would go and play all the time and practice with them, which they were much better than me. But I made really good friends with this one guy, John, who is hilarious. He's got this, I think he's like, I want to say he might be Ukrainian. I don't know where he's from, but he has a really thick accent from over, I would want to say somewhere in that region. And he would always be like, Debbie, come on, play, let's go. And then whenever before he would toss hit the paddle to like serve, he would be like, are you ready?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yes. And he'd go, no, are you ready? 100%. And I said, 90%. No, 100%. It was so funny, and we had such a good time. So I miss them. I just haven't made time to go out and play. I saw them. Actually, I hadn't gone there for about 10 years, and then just last year I went back because I was like, man, I gotta get back to table tennis. So that was one of the things I started joining back in a little bit. So yes, I have played table tennis in the last year.
Have you ever answered to him no for his question, are you ready?
I have, but then he's like, come on. It just makes us like, come on, Deb. Let's go. He's just such a great guy. He's got so much like you, with just the energy, the high energy, and just like positivity of things. Even when I'm like frustrated, when I'm like missing every single, like, every single time I'm hitting, it's like too high. He goes, too high, too fast, too much depth. Back up. He goes, back up. I just love his accent. I just love people with accents. I just have always been somebody who really enjoys a good accent. So.
Is he a table tennis coach?
No, well, he was mine. If I was his, he was the unofficial Deb's unofficial table tennis coach. Yes.
And what about tournaments? Have you ever been there?
I've photographed a tournament. I've never been in a table tennis tournament.
Yeah, but did you want?
At one point I thought it would be pretty cool, but they are really hard to beat. You've got to be pretty good to get qualified in the tournaments. At that time, this is like 2010, 2012. They stopped doing the tournaments because it kind of died off in popularity. It kind of, but there is a good club actually around where I live now. There is a more popular table tennis club, but I don't think there's tournaments, at least that I know of, in Pennsylvania anymore.
Tell me about your sister.
My sister. My sister her name is Melody, and Melody is 2 years younger than I am. And she is going to be celebrating her 40th birthday next month in August. And to celebrate this occasion, she has decided she wanted to take a hot air balloon ride. And her husband did not want to go, and my mom did not want to go. So I said, I am happy to go on a hot air balloon ride with you. So next month, her and I are going to get her away from her children for like 24 hours, which is impossible usually. And we're going to go have a nice dinner, and we're going to celebrate, and we're going to wake up really early and do a hot air balloon. Hopefully, as long as the weather coordinates with us, because it's really tricky. If you've ever heard anything about hot air balloons, it's very tricky. Weather-wise, it has to be like 14 knots or something. I don't know. There's very specific parameters for taking a hot air.
I heard a little about it, so it has to be lower than the average temperature, because otherwise you can't fly it.
You can't get up. I actually volunteered for last year. I tried to volunteer. They have the balloon festival here, hot air balloon festival, and I volunteered for that. And they had 3 or 4 balloons they got up when they went to launch, and then the weather changed. So it's really a hit or miss thing. About my sister, I'll tell you about my sister. She's an amazing, supportive sister that we get to do little adventures here and there. So that's our next upcoming adventure, but we try to go on some kind of little mini adventures every once in a while. And she's very supportive for me. She's always been very supportive to me.
Tell me about one of those adventures.
Different adventure we did was we went to Pittsburgh. I used to live in Pittsburgh, which is about 4 hours from where I am now in the western part of Pennsylvania. And back in 2012, and we went on all kinds of adventures, and I took her out, and she had her first drink. When I used to live there, she would come visit me, and she doesn't really drink, but she had her first drink. Fun things like that. We would just go on these different adventures throughout the city and go to the zoo. And but I was just always making sure my biggest thing is that she had a good experience, because she's typically not somebody who would get out of her comfort zone very often. She's very comfortable to stay right at home with doing the same things. And she's very that's where she likes to hang out with certain people that she's really, really close with. And so I always try to kind of push her out of her comfort zone by saying, all right, well, let's go and do this thing. And and then randomly having her in a field. One time I was trying to take a picture. I was like, I want you to be my model. And she's like, okay. So, because my sister always agrees with me. So she doesn't typically disagree with me. She's a little bit more disagreeable now in her 40s. Well, she's not in her 40s yet. She'll kill me for saying that. In her older adult years, she's a little bit more disagreeable. But typically, anytime when I was a kid, I would ask her to do something. She'd okay. And one time I asked her, be in a field and be my muse and do these I gave her these funky arm things to do. And I came up to her really close and was like, I'm going to take a picture of you right here. And she's just okay. But I had her doing these weird positions and stuff in the field, of just holding her arms in places. It was just hilarious. And she, I have so many stories I could go into, but I won't say too many because she might get mad.
I guess I have to ask her about it. Okay, so Melody is a supportive sister. So what kind of sister are you?
Oh, goodness. One that tells her what to do a lot of the time. I used to be able to give her advice, but now it's more about me taking her advice. Typically, she's actually one of the people that I like. Okay, I need to talk to Melody about this. But I would say, as far as I try to be supportive with her kids, and I moved closer. So I left the city, and I'm now living about 10 minutes from my sister. So popping over to help the kids out is something I do quite often. I'm actually babysitting next week. Yay. And hanging out with my niece and my nephew are fun.
I can see that you're very happy about what I was saying about babysitting.
I'm happy about it because I love it until I don't, and then I get to leave. Because then I'm like, oh, this is fun. Okay, I'm leaving now. As soon as they start to cry or scream or poop or something, I'm like, I'm out. But I think I kind of, have the mindset of wanting, like I said, wanting to have her have a great experience whenever we're doing something together. So I hosted her bridal shower for her when she got married, her baby shower when she first had her kid. I'm very detail oriented, so I like to get kind of, and I'm an entertainer. As community people, we love to bring people together. And I have been bringing people together in person for many, many years. And so I love having a good party and hosting. So that's one of Melody knows I'm always the person to go to for a good party.
Do you always follow Melody's advices?
No, I should. A lot of the time I should. No, she doesn't always, and two, I think we're at the age now where we kind of both understand that we have our own journey. And so when the last 2 years have been really tough personally for me for a lot of reasons. And so she's been the silent supporter of like, okay, Deb, you'll see what you need to do. I'm not, she gives some insight. She's like, says some things and then it's like, you'll figure it out. So she's kind of that person now. I think much more, but she's very good with like financial advice because she's good with money and I am not good with money. Whenever there's a question as far as that goes, that's definitely somebody I would ask.
Tell me about the mission trip to Alaska in 1996 with your grandfather.
Oh goodness, you're like really pulling back the layers here, dude. I love it. So my grandfather was a pastor and he would do group mission trips with his church every like summer. And they would go, there was a mission camp in Alaska and Anchorage area that they would go to. And there were some churches that they would help rebuild and things like that. But, and I always wanted to go. I was super jealous every time he went. I was like, oh, I want to go to Alaska. That sounds so cool. Because I had never been anywhere really at that point, besides like an hour away from home or something. And Florida once. Like I had never really gone anywhere and this is when I was 16. I wrote an entire request for money to my church to say, here's why I want to go to Alaska and here's why I need your money to go. So I got myself funded to go to Alaska when I was 16. And then when I got there, I was kind of frustrated because everybody like was getting like, the men were getting to do like roof things and hammer and nail. And I was like, all right, what do I get to do? Like, where's my hammer? And they're like, you're going to paint signs. I'm like, well, can I do something a little bit more? And they're like, no, you're going to paint signs. There's the paint. Go paint signs. So I was like, my task was to paint signs. But the best part about that trip was hiking at Denali at like 9 o'clock at night, because there, of course, it stays lighter till late at night. So just having it be like bright as daytime at like a time when it's typically in Pennsylvania, like dark, was probably the highlight. And then one of the people that my grandfather was friends with, it was all mostly adults. Like I was the only like teenager, but there was one guy that was in Alaska at the camp that we were staying at who was like 21, and I had this like big crush on him the whole week that we were there. We were there for like 2 weeks or a week or two, and the whole time I was there I was like, oh man, this guy's great. So I got to he took me out on like a canoe or something, and I'm just like, yeah, I was like falling. I was just like, uh-huh. Like everything he said was like the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. He probably thought he was like, oh, this kid. But that was a pretty cool trip. I got to paint some signs. I got to go on some cool hiking trips and go into like a tiny plane, because like you go from one big airport to then like to get to other places you have the little smaller airplanes, the smaller airport. So that was an interesting experience. I've been trying to dig out my photographs from that. And that's what my project was going to be, which is probably what you saw. Was I was trying to dig out some, and my plan was to like write about it, but then that's how I have a lot of projects, and that's one that kind of was like fell to the side there.
Why?
Because life. Because I was trying. Yeah, I think that I was talking about that probably back in 2017. I don't know when you saw that. It was probably 2018, 2017, 18. But then
something like that.
Yeah. So then I was still working in my corporate sales job. So I was busy with that. And then I was trying to start my many business adventures. So I've always had about 7 projects going at a time. Right now I have a number of projects going at a time. So, I don't have any good reason other than it just, but there is a thing that I wanted to do of like pulling out right now I am working on a project with my grandfather's photographs, and I'm working on a slide curtain. And I don't know if you remember the days of slides. Do you remember what a slide is? Like, okay, when you had projectors and stuff. Well, my grandfather had books and books of albums and albums of slides. And when he passed away and they went to my mom, and so my mom was kind of storing them for me for a while, and she sold her house. She said she came over to my apartment and she dropped off these boxes. She goes, "Here, you wanted these slides. You wanted me to hold them for you. Here they are." And in 2019, I started putting together these slides with little hooks and drilling holes into the corners of the slides, and then making a slide curtain, which I had made for my kitchen windows. But now since I've moved, I combined the 2 panels that I had into like 2 larger panels. And so one of my projects is using my grandfather's slides to make curtains for my living room.
What? I mean, how did you get this idea to create photo curtains?
I was Googling different ways to use old photo things, because when I went to art school, I had boxes of film, and I was going to throw my film away. And then I'm like, well, maybe I could do something fun with it. So I Googled some projects around film, and there was apparently an abundance of Pinterest posts around this topic, and a lot of people that are doing these kinds of like, what's the word I want to say? Like, not antique, but like retro is the word I'm looking, like retro kind of projects. And so there was one example of a light that you bought from IKEA, and then you basically glued on the strips of film. And then I tried that, but that didn't last very long. That broke in like a day or something. That didn't really work longer. But then the slide project was one I found through that. So I actually found it through a Pinterest post like years and years ago. And so I told my mom about it, and I said I wanted to do it, but then I just didn't make a point of doing it until 2019 when I started doing it. And the first panel took me, it was like 40 hours. The next panel was probably longer than that. It was probably more like 40 or 50 hours. I started to get a little bit better at it. So it was like a process. So I don't know if I'll do all the like whole curtain panels, but right now I'm just thinking of like 2 side panels, and that's probably going to take me about another 40 to 50 hours. Which is why it takes a long time. This is why I've been working on it for 3 years.
Do you have any sequence there, or just random order?
Any sequences? Is that what you said?
A sequence of photos.
No, it's very random. I went through them though, and like sorted them on things that I feel like I wanted to include. So there's a lot of people, because but there are a lot of like landscapes. He had, for some reason, this is the thing that I think is so weird. So he put these things in albums, 40 or 50 years ago, right? And then nobody opens it up until I come along and like I'm pulling them out. And my mom did scan them in, by the way. So I'm not ruining slides that are historic or something. Like she digitally scanned them and then gave them to me and stuff. So they will fade. And so that's just a process of like when you hang things up and light is exposed. But the thing that I was working through was he would put just like pictures that weren't like black pictures. I was like of like nothingness, or like pictures that were very, what I would call out of focus or very blurry, like not like pictures I would just throw away. And he still intentionally put them in there. And I'm just like, okay, Grandpa, all right. So you just really felt that every single frame. And there's a teacher that I used to have in art school who said every frame matters. So when that was when you had a limit of like 24 exposures or 36 exposures on a roll of film. So you didn't have the unlimited photo options that we have now with digital. And so you had to make every frame count. So I guess because of that, he put every picture in his slide book, which was, so I didn't use the ones necessarily that were kind of like completely blurry or like black or dark or like where there was like something, but you couldn't tell what it was. So I kind of did a little bit of like weeding through and kind of collect like, what's the word? Curating my grandfather's photographs.
How many shots are you doing right now to have one good picture?
When I take a photograph, you mean? I mean, I don't usually take more than 2 or 3. I've learned that for myself, the 2 things that I don't like are post-processing and having repetitive images to edit. So I typically will take a medium. I'm a wide shooter, so typically that means I like to try to include as much as possible in my frame of focus. And then I try to take a close up and then a middle. So to have a mid, a close up, a mid range, and then a wide shot. So those 3 versions, if I'm trying to detail or document something, are the 3 versions that I would do. But as far as like multiple exposures and like testing out those kinds of things, I don't typically do that much unless it's a really challenging lighting situation.
What do you like the most about camping?
What do I like the most about camping? I was camping this past weekend and I was so happy that there was a night where it didn't rain and that I took the rain cover off of the top. And so I just have the netting. And so I just lay there and I'm just like looking out the stars. And that's one of my favorite parts of camping, of just being able to like, and by the way, I'm kind of glamping, not really officially camping. So people listening that are like, that's not camping or something, but I stay in a tent and I have an air mattress. I'm 42. Like this is just the way I rolled out. And as I'm like doing more camping, my camping gear has definitely expanded a lot. And we were talking last weekend with some friends that we were doing an improv camp, and they show up and they're like, man, you've got all this set up. Because between me and this other girl, we had like, it was glamping. Like there was just a lot of, I don't know if you know the term glamping. Do you know what that means?
Not really. Can you explain what is the difference between camping and glamping?
So camping typically is like, sleeping bag under the stars. Maybe you have like a pop-up tent or something, but very minimal. You're cooking on the fire. There's not a whole lot of other devices involved in your camp experience. Glamping is where it's like almost as close to resembling your home as possible while still experiencing the nature. So having like a bed is like, people have these like big yurts with like beds and like couches and stuff. Now I don't go that far, but I just got a new tent, by the way, because my 4-person tent was getting really tight with my air mattress. So I got a 6-person tent just so that my air mattress sits in. And I could have like a little table because my friend was camping, who I was camping with last weekend, she had a little table and a fan and like all the things that I was just like, man, I am like slacking on this whole camping experience. So anyway, so looking at the stars would be one of my favorite ones, like while laying in my comfy tent area with my blankets and pillows. And then the swimming has been a new experience that I really started to do. It's really crazy. As a kid, we didn't really go camping. And so as an adult, I'm experiencing a lot more campgrounds, and I've challenged myself to get to the Pennsylvania state parks, there's over 120 Pennsylvania state parks. I just got to my 52nd. I reached 52 state parks 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that I love about state parks is A, they usually have really good bathrooms, except for the last one I was at. B, they always have a map, so you don't get lost when you're hiking, or at least you know where you're at if you are lost. And then C, sometimes they have a lake, and that's a really great experience after like a hot summer day and you're hiking and you're all gross and you're like, perfectness of sitting. And when I say swimming, I'm not like actively swimming. What I mean by swimming is I have a floaty. I lay in my floaty just enough to get like cool down. And I have a hat that I put over my eyes. That is my swimming experience. It's me floating with a hat covering my face and basically kind of semi taking a nap while trying to like block out the sounds of kids screaming.
From your perspective, what are pluses and minuses of solo camping?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good question. These are some good questions. I'm going to prop you on the questions because sometimes I get really boring ones. So this is good. Pros and cons of solo camping. So obviously, if you are trying to set up something like a tent or tarps, doing it as a one person is challenging sometimes, especially if it's raining or whatnot. So, and then bears, or random animals or critters. Sometimes that could be. We had a raccoon last week at our camp, and that really freaked me out. So, like, the downsides of solo camping is that you are alone, and hopefully you don't get eaten by a bear or like a snake doesn't attack me because I'm really afraid of that kind of thing. But I actually was afraid of a jumping spider, honestly, the other day. So I'm a little bit afraid of some things. But anyway, I will say that the benefit of solo camping is that you can just really create an experience for yourself outside of the norm. So I'm used to like working on a computer all day, but when you're solo, and you don't have to argue with people about what you're going to do. Like, the nice thing about doing any kind of solo travel, whether it's camping or other kind of travel, is you get to decide whatever you want to do. And if you decide to change your mind, you're like, oh, I plan to go to this thing. I plan to go on a 2-hour hike. You know what? It's 75, it's 85 degrees. I'm not going on a 2-hour hike. That's nuts. I'll go walk for like half a mile, and then I'll go swimming and floating for 2 hours. Because nobody cares, because it's like, it's all me. And then I get the sites where you walk in, like a walk-in site versus like a drive-up site. So the walk-in sites are a little bit more work because you have to like go in there to bring all your stuff, like if you have camping gear and everything. But once you're in a walk-in site, typically it's much more private and secluded. So it's almost like your little apartment living space in nature, which is really nice because the one thing I don't like about campgrounds is there's a lot of people. And the whole point to me of nature is to like get away from people and experience nature. And so I feel like campgrounds can typically be the opposite of that sometimes, because they're all kind of, depending on where you go, they're like crammed together. So pro tip on camping for solo people who want to experience nature would be to like find the walk-in sites that are like away from the rest of the campground, because you'll have a better experience if you want to like listen to the sounds of nature without the distractions of like people.
Today I had a conversation with our community member, and he told that he is a sound explorer. So he records different sounds. Have you ever tried something like that?
I do a lot of mindful meditation around sound. I haven't tried to record any sound necessarily. But yeah, I think that at nighttime, for example, like the fire, I like the sound of just really engaging in the sounds of the fire. And then the sounds of nature as you're like sleeping or like going to sleep. I think those are really, and in waking up in the morning, those are really great times to just really be cognizant of the sounds. And one of the times that I camped last year, it had rained in the middle of the day. Well, I had woke up and then it started raining. And then I was like, well, and this is before I had like any umbrellas or anything else. So I basically had the option of like getting in my car or sitting in my tent. Those are the two options. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit in my tent. So I sat in my tent and there's like a little window, you know, so I opened the window and I just laid there and like listened to the rain, laid on my comfy in my dry tent, comfy on my air mattress. Yeah. But like looking out at the woods, because the other key thing is I always aim the door to the woods, not to like the, you know, drive up campsite thing. So that every time I'm like opening the door or in the morning or at nighttime, I can like look at the woods versus like my car or something. But those are the things that I really like about camping of just, I think it would be interesting to do the sound recording. I feel like that would also be a challenge for me to not have commentary. I feel like I would want to have commentary. I feel like if I was recording and I'm like, oh, what is that? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a raccoon. Okay, no, now it's definitely a bird. I feel like I would have a whole commentary. Like, it would not just be sounds of nature.
Yeah. What love came first, for traveling or photography?
Definitely photography. I wanted to be a photojournalist since I learned about Martha Ryle, who was a photojournalist with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when I was in high school. I was very inspired by her work.
What your first photography works do you remember?
Well, I started learning photography when I went on that Alaska trip. But when I started when I went to art school, I did a lot of documentary photography of events. But I mentioned about my parents being missionaries. I had my documentary project for my photojournalism class where we went to New York City, and I actually had my parents stand in the same places where they were when they first met, which is and then I photographed them like traveling to these different places and like going back to the mission that they worked at in, I don't know, 1970 something, and, you know, seeing that it's still there. And this is back in 2000 probably. But I did a whole documentary project on my parents and their work when they met, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Also gives me a picture into like what it was like to be them when they were younger.
So that they can compare. Okay, what changed? Everything the same. Yeah.
No, a lot changed. New York City, a lot changed from like 70 to 2000.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But it was interesting. There were some things that were still, you know, the subway. The biggest thing I think that we experienced was that they remembered the actual subway stops where they would routinely be. And they remembered like routine characters that like, oh, the same guy used to get off the subway and he always wore this thing or something. Like they just remembered certain, you know, characteristics of like the normal everyday New Yorkers, which was interesting.
Was there a place which didn't change?
The mission that they worked for was a mission for men exclusively, to help men who dealt with substance abuse and had either mental illness or other health challenges. And so that was still in existence, and they still focused on supporting men to help them, get off their feet if they were homeless or get out of addiction situations, and also help them providing a meal, 2 meals every day, and cots and places to sleep at night for the homeless. So that was still in existence in 2000.
Do you plan things before doing them, or do them immediately and then think about what you have done?
Both. I mentioned I'm an improviser, so sometimes I do improvise things, but I am at core a planner. I am very organized and like to plan out most of the trip and then be able to wing it on the fly during the trip. So when I went to California in 2020, I did a 2-week road trip, and with my ex-boyfriend, who is a wing it person, and I'm a plan it person. And so that was definitely a challenge, but we did a little bit of both, where I would start to get anxious after, like, we were there for 2 weeks. So we would be we flew into San Diego. We did 2 days in La Jolla. We drove up to Los Angeles, where his parents or his family lived. And then we did 2 days at Long Beach. Then we drove over so I planned all these trips so that we would have like 2 days in some place, and we would stay like at an Airbnb. And then I rented an RV by Joshua Tree National Park. And so we stayed in an RV for a couple days. And then we were like trying to wing it. After we went to Joshua Tree, we were going to go over to Sequoia, and we were going to camp because he had packed some camping gear. Well, so this is the night that I didn't plan. And it was like, okay, we'll leave it up to you and we'll figure out the camping situation. And I told him the wrong entrance to Sequoia National Park. And so we actually went in like the backside of Sequoia National Park instead of like the main entrance. And what that meant was that we spent 5 hours of just driving to get out of the park. Because once we didn't, I'm a person who doesn't like to turn around kind of a person. I'm like, let's figure out the way forward. And we kept going forward. But as the hours went, it was like, literally, we were just going along Joshua Tree is gigantic. And we were just going along like the bottom corner of Joshua Tree. But it took us like 5 hours because it has such massive inclines. It's basically like a switchbacks the whole time. And so it took us like 5 hours to get out of there. So by the time it was nighttime. It was like 9 o'clock by the time we actually like got to any kind of sort of campground stuff. And all the campground, like there was nobody in the office to ask about like where we could camp and stuff. So we didn't know anywhere we could go to camp. So then we were just getting out of the park. And then luckily the first town we came across a hotel and they had 1 room left. And by the time it was like midnight, I was like, I want out of this car and I want a bed and I want it now. So that was our not planning it. And that's how that panned out. So you can see that my journey there was like, after that, I'm like, we're planning it now. Like I want to.
Do you use daily affirmations?
I do. I am a big affirmation person. One of my friends, Heath Armstrong, he is the founder of an organization called Rage Create, and he makes these domination decks, which are really cool. It's called the Smartass Domination Deck. And he and I met in 2018, and he gave me these decks. And so these cards, there's like a gigantic stack, and I basically have them all over my house. I have them in my kitchen, and I have them over by my meditation area where I have a chair and a table. And so every day I have them as bookmarks, and I kind of use those as prompts to kind of remind me around positivity or just being able to see a different perspective instead of being stuck in something like an anger or a sadness emotion of like, okay, how can I flip that emotion? So yeah, I usually use some kind of affirmations, and I do meditate using an app called the 10% Happier app, which has a lot of different guided meditations from a lot of teachers. So those are the two things that I do as like a daily morning routine. Mm-hmm.
Can you share some of your favorite affirmations?
I would say one of them is just asking myself how to reframe something. If I have a thought around, I don't know how I'm going to do something. Usually I don't know. Whenever I say I don't know, I end there. It's like, well, I don't know. That's like an ending point. Mm-hmm. And what I learned through my work with some coaches and just on my own is that that's actually the starting point. So when you say, I don't know, okay, what don't I know? And why is that important? So I actually start with questions as affirmations to prompt me to get to different thought processes. So it might not be always like a positive. I can't think of like a direct positive. I don't even have my card deck in front of me. I have mindfulness cards, but I don't even have my card deck in front of me right now. It's over in my other room. I usually have a card here. But anyway, I would say just thinking about how to reframe things. So different ways to look at stuff all the time. Like, what's one thing I can do today to make myself proud? That's typically a good one. Or how do I want to feel today? Or who, what's one thing I can be excited to share with somebody when I talk to them? It's more about, like, for me, it's a lot more about questions than direction.
Tell me about the situation when you got stuck, and you asked yourself, what should I do? And it helped you right away.
That happens like every day. I feel like stuck every day at the time right now. Well, one of the biggest things that brought me into the community industry and met you and a lot of other people was this pandemic. And I had quit my corporate job in 2019 to become a travel writer. And then I was pitching travel publications. And then all of a sudden, the whole thing started happening. And I realized, I guess travel isn't going to work for me right now as a career, like to be a travel writer when nobody's traveling. So what do I do? And I had a lot of, I don't know what I'm doing with my life kind of situation. And one of the things that I had been doing was bringing people together in person. And how I decided to pivot was to ask other people how they transitioned virtually. So I did a lot of like asking others. And one of the things that I learned was I needed to ask for help. And there's a lot of my life where I spent that I can figure this out myself. I can get through this by myself. And the last 2 years have definitely proven to me that I need help and I need to ask for help. So I think when I'm in a challenging situation where I'm stuck, for example, like this whole, I had an idea and a plan, and then that whole plan went to crap in 2020. Then I asked some people, and I just sat in the room virtually with people that I really admired and kind of just observed what they were doing. And then they gave me an opportunity to talk. This one person gave me an opportunity to talk with him one-to-one. And I was explaining to him like some of the things I was struggling with. And he said, oh, well, here are some examples of what you could do. And that is how I got into the community industry is just by really asking some questions, exploring, what do I actually want to do? What do I actually want to experience? One of the things I actually want to experience was finding more calm, but I didn't really know exactly what that meant. What I realized was through conversations with people.
Once I noticed you posted a picture and the words were, someone once asked me, why do you always insist on taking the hard road? And I replied, why do you assume I see two roads? What does it mean for you?
That's one of my favorite quotes, because what it means to me is that Some people have opinions about how other people should live. And some people would say, why do you do it that way? Well, I didn't know there was another way to do it. First of all, I didn't spend 17 years trying to figure out which way was the right way before I took a step. I just took steps and then went. So I think it's more about awareness of wanting to know the right path, but not knowing and going anyway. But also acknowledging that a question is now, it's a prompting question for me, and asking myself before I like go 17 layers into something, is this the path I want to go? Is this the best way to go? And what is the outcome that I want to experience with this forward motion of whatever it is? And that kind of helps me, prompt me a little bit to ask a couple more questions.
What season do you like the most?
Fall, hands down.
Why?
Leaves, air. The air is just crisp, and the leaves change colors here in Pennsylvania. And just have this amazing, the weather is just so nice. It's like sweatshirt, jacket, light jacket weather. And so it's my favorite time to just go on some hikes and have a campfire and be able to like not feel hot or cold. It's just kind of the perfect weather.
Do you like this mushroom hunting, or how it's called?
Mushroom hunting?
Yeah, gathering mushrooms and so on.
I do not gather mushrooms. I do not go mushroom hunting. I know what you mean. I've had people that I've met that have done the mushroom thing, but I actually think I might be allergic to mushrooms. So
yeah,
I'm not going out of my way to gather them.
It's totally not the best way to gather them. So yeah. Do you have a bonsai tree?
Oh, goodness, no. I was really working on trying to like have plants in my house in 2020. And it was this whole adventure of spending a lot of money on getting plants at the store and then them dying one by one. And so my last plant died a few months ago, and my mother for my birthday brought me fake flowers and fake plants. So she was like, Deb, I think we're just, the whole plant thing for you is just not going to happen. So bonsai is a whole nother level of plant that I would not want to attempt to kill.
You may have a fake bonsai tree, so
yeah, fake bonsai tree is the only kind of bonsai tree that would last at my house.
How do you enjoy the moments?
This moment?
Any moment? General, any moments. How do you enjoy them?
I really have found that it's really amazing to sit and in some silence and really notice what's around you, like just where you are, feet on the ground, having the feeling of like really feeling your feet on the ground, feeling your hands, on your lap or on the surface. Because what happens is then your breathing slows and you feel more calm. And so that's what I typically work to do. But with other people, I find that I really try to eliminate distractions so that I can be 120% in the conversation with people, or when I'm in the presence of others. I really want to show up and listen. And so I typically don't have my phone on. It's, in a bag, or it's away, or it's not around me. And I don't have other distractions. I'm really focused on connecting with another person when I'm with people. And I think that's a sign of respect and honoring the person that you're with. And it wasn't something I've always been skilled at. And it's not always something I do really well. Sometimes I get in my own little tangents and worlds. But I really love having really meaningful conversations with people and being really present with people and that just to me shows them they matter and that I know that.
Once you met a person rollerblading with a shark suit on, and he told you that just wanted people to be happy. What do you want people to be?
Yeah, he was a funny character. Sharky.
Yeah.
He even wrote a book. He had a book with all the photographs of people he met in 2020. It was all over the news in our area. He's funny. I think it's a great sentiment to want people to be happy, but happy is defined a lot differently by a lot of people. I think a lot of people resonate with calm. And so I know that's something that specifically in the last couple of years has been really challenging for a lot of people. And where you are is very challenging to even attempt at that. But I think there's moments that we can set ourselves up for success in a way to provide ourselves to feel calm. And if we are calmer, I really truly believe that if I am a calmer person, I'm going to step out into the world as a calmer person. And that is just going to have a ripple effect with people I come in contact with. So I think when you're asking what I want to feel and what I want others to feel when they're around me or with me, or even if we're celebrating in a party and it's an energizing situation, I always feel like there's an element, even if it's a higher elevated energy situation, there's always a level of calm that you can bring to it.
Describe this feeling of calm. What does it feel to you? Like, what is the meaning of being calm?
I think slowness, like slower breath, not feeling so like typically the opposite of anxiety is what I typically say.
Yeah.
Like, the chest, heartbeat racing or feeling jittery. It's the opposite of that. It's feeling connected to my body and connected to the present where I am. So the connectedness, I think, is a key piece of it. And the acceptance component, I think, is what I gravitate to as well. Of if you're in a space where you feel safe and you know that the people in that space are people you can trust, that is going to help you feel a lot more calm. And so I think that means you have to set yourself up for success by creating your own safe space, whatever that means for you, whatever that word means for you. And one of the things that I've done when I got into my new place was I created an environment where I set myself up to experience the feeling of calm. One of my friends is a interior designer, and she helps people pick out colors based on moods. And we created a mood board when I first, before I had furniture and all of these things. And we put together the color palettes of the mood board. And the mood board was about calm. And so the living room in my house has grays and whites and lighter blues. And those were the calming more, when I was asked with questions that she sent me of what does calm mean to me, those colors, the images and the graphics, like the photographs that I've picked, the artwork that I have in my house, the elimination of clutter, like the just simplicity of not too much. All of those elements come together to create a calming environment that I live in. And then organizationally wise, that could even apply to my digital space of I try to get to inbox 0 every day. I don't have a lot of email. I unsubscribe to things that I don't want in my inbox. And I intentionally organize my digital space for my own ability to feel calm, as well as writing emails with directness and simplicity and shortness. All of those things combined help me to create a calmer experience for myself and for other people. I don't know if that was like the question, your answer you were looking for.
What social media apps do you have on your phone?
The ones that I use most, I have, well, I'll tell you a couple different things. I am a little bit of addicted to Amazon right now. So I do have some things always in my Amazon cart. So I definitely have that. I also have Airbnb and Verbo on my phone because I'm always constantly loving to like look at places to go. So I'm always like looking for the next like Airbnb that I want to stay at, for example. And then the Mighty Networks is what my community is on, and that I'm in a lot of Mighty Networks. So I always have the Mighty Networks app on my phone. I just put the Circle app on my phone to discover what their app is about. Social media wise, I have Instagram. I typically post on Instagram and then have it go to Facebook. I do have Facebook, but I don't typically use that a whole bunch. Or Instagram. I'm not really on those platforms. I don't have Twitter on my phone. My most used apps are probably my meditation app, which is the 10% Happier app, my camera, and my camera on my phone, and then my email.
Do you have
and music? Oh, and Spotify. Sorry, Spotify. I love Spotify because I get the paid version only because when I read, I need music like either classical or some kind of like calming music. I basically have calming playlists that I just find and like use those. They help me focus when I'm reading. So I usually have Spotify on there a lot too. And then I have playlists for Spotify when I go camping and like to jam when I'm setting up my tent and stuff.
Do you like visiting art galleries?
I love art galleries. Yes.
What was the latest?
There's some really great art galleries I've been to. One of the most notable galleries that I've been to this year was at St. Petersburg, Florida, at the Dali Museum, which is phenomenal. Amazing architecture and just amazing artwork in there. So that was one of my favorite galleries. My second favorite gallery is the Met in New York City. But what gallery have I been to recently? There's a really great gallery in Harrisburg where I live called the Susquehanna Art Museum, and they have always have some good shows that I like to stop in and talk to some of the artists when they have talkbacks.
Are you a member of some artists communities?
I am not currently a member, but I've been a member for a number of years with the Harrisburg Art Association. And there is I just moved to Cumberland County. So there's actually a Carlisle Art Association that I've been meaning to reach out to because I think I do want to start. I was exhibiting my artwork for a number of years, and I think I want to do a couple submissions, which is another side thing that I want to do. But I'm not a current member of an actual group or collective, but I'm always supportive of the arts. And thankfully, we got some more money to support arts in the recent budget that Pennsylvania legislature just passed. So arts is continuing to be an important thing for our childhood education as well as adults.
What were you thinking while watching a demolition derby?
So my friend got me to go to this demolition derby thing, and all I could think about was why. Like the only thing that I sat there was like, why is this a thing? I don't get it. People ramming their cars into each other's cars. That's the only point of this whole thing. And we're just sitting there eating hot dogs and French fries and watching it all happen and hopefully waiting for like a fire to explode. And I'm just like, why? The whole time I'm just sitting there like, why? And my friend's like, this is really great. It's so cool. I'm like, all right, I'm there. I'm here for you, girl. Yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I was just like, it's one of those things where people I'm just like, okay, it's not my jam, but all right.
What following intuition mean for you?
Following your intuition. Is that what you said? Following intuition? That's such a loaded question. You could go a lot of directions with that, but I'll say for me, it means tapping into what feels right for me, what feels good for me, and then deciding to stick with my values around it. Sometimes it's a lot easier for me to go with the flow or go with what other people are saying is the right thing to do, and sometimes that's not in alignment with what I feel. So I think when I'm in alignment with my intuition, it means that I'm doing what I feel like is the thing that I need to do. And that might not be the thing that other people think is the right thing to do, but that's the thing that I need to do. Does that make sense?
Totally. I wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Rainy or sunny day?
Sunny day.
Chilling on the beach or hiking?
Beach.
What are your favorite color and song?
Blue. Song, that's tough. The only song that's coming to mind right now is "You Are My Sunshine."
And who is the singer?
Oh, I don't. It's like an old song that we used to sing growing up. But I will say "Ironic" by Alanis Morissette. I'll give you that because I want to go see Alanis Morissette's coming to Ocean City, Maryland. I'm trying to get there for her concert in October. So I'll say my favorite song of all time is probably "Ironic" by Alanis Morissette.
Cool. Name 2 people whose community life journey you are happy to hear about.
There's so many people that have interesting journeys. I really love watching my travel blogger friends. There's a couple, Nate and I'm blanking on her name now, but I have 2 friends that do travel blogging and they travel all over the place and it's super inspiring. And I just love to see how they go through in different areas and travel, and they are so focused on building community in person and how to build better relationships in person, which I really love. So that's one of the people I follow, the 2 people I follow, their journey a lot.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Reading people's minds. I would love to know what people are thinking. Because it's always like, what are you? I always have the question of like, what are you thinking? Or where did that come from? I would love to be like in that person's head of being like, I don't know if you do this, but I do this. I backstory myself. So I'll have a thought and then I'll be like, where did that thought come from? Oh, I was drinking a glass of water and then I had a thought about that I should get some more water. And then I realized that the pitcher isn't full. And so I had to go, like, it's just like, I back journey stuff. So I feel like if I could hear the back journey of like how people made a decision or did something, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I also think sometimes, how did I get there? So I totally understand what you're talking about. Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you, but didn't?
What's the craziest thing I've ever done?
What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
Becoming a river rafting guide. In 2019, I trained and became a river rafting guide in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. It took 6 weeks to terrify myself and not die in a river. and then I guided as a guide for the summer.
And you're still doing it?
No. I did it in 2019 and then things happened in 2020. And so my life kind of shifted, but it is a goal for 2023 for next year, because I need to get back into some healthy shape so that I feel like I can not die in the river. But once my plan is to get back into shape so that I can do river guiding again next year.
Oh, wow. Deb, thank you very much for this conversation. It's so amazing to dive deep in all of those things you tell us, like tell me, not us, tell me. So yeah, it's like, you know, it feels like I know you for so many years after this conversation. So thank you very much for being so open and sharing your life story. It was super awesome.
And thank you for the amazing deep diving questions. It's definitely a different interview that I'm used to having, but it's a really great one because this is the stuff that community is all about. It's really getting to know people better and being able to go deeper. And I'm so thankful that you're out there doing this kind of work. So thanks for having me.
Hey, so see you later in the community journey, and bye.
I will. All right, take care.